Overheadlines, where headlines are served neat.
And welcome to another episode of Bourbon Over Headlines, where your headlines are served neat. Today's episode, we're staying in the Northeast, staying in New England. We're doing Concord, New Hampshire this week. So everybody pour yourself a glass, sit back, and let's see what Concord has to do for us when we go back in time. So just a little bit about the city. It's from colonial times, founded by some people from Massachusetts that came down and wanted their own state. Because if you remember, Massachusetts Bay was this huge colony. That's what the Pilgrims formed. And a lot of the New England states broke off of that. Maine broke off, New Hampshire, Vermont, all that. All those states pretty much were parts of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. A lot of that stuff, a lot of those states up there broke off from that. 1700s, 1800s, all that. Also, Concord, New Hampshire has the oldest state house that the legislature will meet in its original chamber. So pretty much the state house that was built in 1819, early 1800s, still in use today, where the legislature of the state is doing it. And before I forget, Concord is part of our state capital series, where I do a chunk of state capitals in a 3-4 week span and then come back to other cities as that way I'm not just doing all 50 at one time. If you want to go back, last week I did Montpelier, I've done Juneau, I've done Jackson, I've done other Sacramento. All those are state capitals. So if you want to go back and watch all those state capitals, I'll put a couple of the links in the videos at the end, so we can do the state capital series if you want to figure out what's going on in the rest of the state capitals. Now, this week, we're actually going back to the 1940s. We're not doing the 1920s because I use newspapers.com as a source for all these articles. I couldn't find a newspaper in Concord, New Hampshire that had articles from the 1920s or 1930s in newspapers.com archives. So I'm using the 1940s. So we're not going back 100 years, we're going back 80 years. So also, current population is 44,674, approximately 45,000. It's the third largest city in New Hampshire, behind Nashua and Manchester. Back in the 1920s, I went to the 1920s, okay, because that's what originally what I was going to do. It was 22,000. In the 1940s, it was about 30,000. So it's grown that way. The first radio station in New Hampshire was 1922. That was WKAV. It was less than 30 miles from Concord, so Concord got it. The first one in Concord proper was in 1946. Okay. So that's what that is. So back to the radio stations again. The 1920s began the golden age, where everybody started getting radios nationally. Kind of ironic, back in one of my earlier episodes, I mentioned that, don't remember which one it was, that part of the CBS radio network, which was across the entire country, was one of the cities was the first one. I think it was it Jackson? Might have been Jackson. I don't remember which one it was. But one of them was one of the first stations in the CBS radio network, and CBS radio just stopped broadcasting. So I guess we're starting to get to the end of radio on that front, where all these old stations are starting to either have to rebrand or they're going off the air. It's a sad day of the year. So this is, we're going to go back. I got some more stats. Some famous people. You have Annie Duke, who is a poker player. She's a degree. She's a college graduate, degree in psychology. She does a lot of stuff with big hedge fund firms, with going on psychology of how people do stocks and how to market. Does all that. Does the psychology of that. Also, Levi Hutchins. He's a clockmaker. He made the first, that we know of, the first American alarm clock. So all those alarm clocks on your phone, If you're old enough to remember the big alarm clock that had the red numbers that you could hit forever and it wouldn't break. This is the guy you blame for that, Levi Hutchins. He developed the first American alarm clock. So let's blame him for that. Also, Benjamin Holt, which was part of the Holt Manufacturing Company. He was born in Concord. He went to Cali to form his company. Now, Holt Manufacturing developed tractors, full tread tractors and full tread farming equipment. So if you ever seen a farmer equipment that has like wheels on the front, like a half track, or it's full tread, the tread ones, this is the guy who developed that whole, all the excavators, all that, where they have the full treads. In farm equipment, this is the guy who developed that. Either blame him or thank him, whichever one you decide to do. Howard Lehrer, another poker player, Andy Duke's brother. Their father was an author and poet from Concord, so they're all born in Concord. Stonefield Farms, which is a dairy farm, organic dairy farm. The owner, Gary Hutchins, the founders from this area. Those are just the faces. Also, you got Matt Bonner, who's an NBA player. If you're an NBA fan, Matt Bonner is from Concord. Red Rolfe, who was a pitcher for the Yankees and other teams, won 5 World Series championships. Bob Tewksbury, also another Major League Baseball player, and many other sports players. There's too many to mention. I'm just a baseball guy, so I brought the 2 baseball players. Tewksbury is more a guy who pitched in the 80s and 90s. He was with multiple teams. Red Rolfe pitched back in the heyday of the Yankees. But to get more serious here, I don't know how captivated or how much you guys care, but we just went back to the moon. So we just went back with Artemis 2, slingshot around, went back around to start launching the next wave, Artemis 3 and beyond, to put people back on the moon, to put astronauts back on the moon, and I guess the plans are now to build an actual moon base on the moon. So we're beginning that. So we did that. We went, I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories. According to NASA, according to the official records, we landed on the moon and we went to the moon several times in the 60s. Okay. All right. Now, with that being said, there are some famous astronauts from this area. So Alan Shepard, who was the first American in space in 1961, is from the Concord area. He was born about 30 minutes away, 20 miles away from Concord. Born in this area. He's from this area. Also, Krista McCullough, or McCullough, however you want to say it. This is where the tragedy comes in. So 40 years ago in January, so this is the 40th anniversary of the Challenger exploding. Krista McCullough was the American school teacher who was chosen in the program to go on that space shuttle to be the first civilian in space. They wanted to choose a teacher. She was a social studies teacher, and tragically the Challenger blew up and she died along with every other astronaut. I think she was from Concord. So with that being said, 40 years ago this year, it happened in January, but 40 years ago this year was the Challenger tragedy, and she happened to be the civilian that was on it. Happened chance that one time it blew, the first time a shuttle blew up, that we had someone like her on it. So we're getting back into space and space exploration, so hopefully we can avoid that again. But now, of course, it's mostly we're helping the private sectors, helping that out, getting us back and forth. So also, one more thing before we go on to our stories. The Concorde coach. Have we ever seen a Western? Has anybody ever seen a Western? Like an old Stagecoach movie? You ever seen that classic Stagecoach? Where the guy's sitting on top. You got the buggy where the people are sitting inside. They open the door up. Like the one in Hateful Eight. All the old school Wells Fargo coaches. The classic American Stagecoach. Those are called Concorde coaches. that was developed. They were developed and built in Concord and sent all over the country. So all those classic, if you ever played the Oregon Trail, those stagecoaches, those coaches that those are Concord coaches. All those famous, like, it's where the term, believe it or not, if you ever wonder where the term shotgun came from, this is where it came from. It came from coaches, stagecoaches, because there would be the driver who had to control the horses, and there'd be usually someone next to him, next to them, who had a shotgun in their hand. That's to prevent animal attack, Indian attack, robbers. That's where the term riding shotgun, because they were riding with a shotgun. Or if they were by themselves, there was a shotgun next to them so that they could get it real quick and protect themselves and the passengers or the cargo on the coach. That's where the term riding shotgun comes from, is from the days of the stagecoach. Because there was either someone who had the shotgun or the shotgun was next to them, riding with them so they could protect the passengers on their coaches. Now, with that being said, we're going to go into our stories today. So speaking of old school stuff and everything else, we're going to go into a good old-fashioned bandit story. This says, police spread bandit hunt to 12 states. Now, we're in the 1940s. Prohibition's been repealed. This is from 1947. It's after World War II. Prohibition's repealed. It was repealed in the 30s. So we're good to go. So this is just someone robbing a liquor store of $10,000. Now, that's a lot of money in 1947. They were forced off the road on the way to the bank. Storm delays. So this happened. Storms let them flee. Now it's going across 12 states. Just says here, a 12-state alarm alerted police today in search of two bandits, one of them carrying a nickel-plated revolver, who held up and robbed the manager of a state-operated liquor store of $10,000. Who was transporting to a bank. So, was transporting the manager of a state-operated liquor store, because some states have state-operated liquor stores back then. Some still do. They were taking the $10,000, so the deposit. So if you ever worked in a store, like a bank, not a bank, but like a convenience store, they used to take the deposits to the bank, and some still do. They take the deposits to the bank cash, because there was cash back then. It's not credit cards. And put in that bag, put it in the overnight deposit slot, or if you could do it when it was still open, you gave it to the bank cashier. They were doing that. So the two bandits forced Leon Ellard, 46, off the road yesterday as he was driving from the store to the bank to deposit the Saturday receipts in the bank. He told the police. They took the money and his car keys and sped off in the direction that he was going. Sped off in the direction towards the drink, which is Derry, which is near here. This is Derry, New Hampshire, not Derry, Massachusetts. Okay. Eller described the man who took the money as about 30 years old, wearing dark glasses and a slight build. He was described their car as a black 1939 or 40. So D.B. Cooper did it. We have a slight man in his 30s with sunglasses. Sounds like D.B. Cooper. This might have been the first thing he did. No, I'm kidding. It's not D.B. Cooper. But I just think it's funny that if you look at the famous sketch of D.B. Cooper, he's got glasses on. And he could be 30. Back then, 30 was different than 30 today. 30 today looks a lot younger. Back then, when he went through the depression and everything, 30 looked old. All those old pictures you see of people, it's like, oh, they look like they're 55, and you realize, no, they're 30 in that picture. Just a harder life back then. Give me a moment. Wearing glasses, dark glasses, and a slight build. He described their car as a black 39 and 40 Chevrolet. Man, those old Chevys, those 39, 40 Chevys, doozies, all those were sweet looking cars. I wish I had one myself. If there's any cars enthusiasts out there, what do you like better? Do you like the 39 or 40 Chevrolets? I'm sure there's some out there. Or what's your favorite car from that era? Or all the car enthusiasts out there, what's your favorite car? Put a comment below on your favorite car from the 30s and 40s. Make, model, what's your favorite car, what's your favorite design, and why? Let's get some engagement. Tell me what that is. With Massachusetts, so apparently this car was either stolen or the people were from Massachusetts with 412. So, again, back then license plate didn't have the same numerals as they do today. A lot of plates have 5, 6, maybe it just had 3. Maybe that's all it had. After Ellard was able to get a ride back to Salem, which is Salem, Dare, they're all in the same area here, to sound the alarm, state police were handicapped in contacting troopers when lightning struck the radio relay transmitter on a mountain, disrupting communications. So a lightning strike prevented them from taking the call out right away. So by the time they did, they put it around 12 states because they didn't know which way they were going. So once again, Ben Franklin, it's your fault. If you haven't realized what lightning was and how powerful it could have been and how to harness it with lightning rods, we wouldn't be in this situation. Blame it all on Ben Franklin. All right. Speaking of lightning, tree surgeon electrocuted. Sorry, trigger warning. This is a story. Someone's going to die in this story. My apologies. It's what it is. It's the headline. Coming in contact with a power line carrying 4,500 volts of electricity. Thomas Mercicalo, 19, of Portsmouth, was electrocuted. So he was trimming a tree, accidentally hit a power line. He was 19. So Paramount youth. Back then, I guess 21 was adult. In the 40s, still hadn't been 18 yet. So I guess he's still technically, by today's standards, he's an adult. But 19 is still pretty young. Was clearing away dead limbs from the power companies right away. He was he was doing stuff for the power company. He was clearing dead limbs from a power company's right. So the power company has a right of way, and he was clearing limbs so the power company, so they could clear the right of way for the power company. So he got electrocuted, hitting a power line, doing stuff to make sure the power company could do its right of way. How ironic is that? And that's not an Alanis Morissette ironic. That's not like it rains on your wedding day or you win the lottery and die the next day. This isn't Alanis Morissette ironic, okay? Sorry, Alanis, but it's not Alanis Morissette. This is actually like you're clearing stuff for the power company. You hit a power line. That's really, really weird. It was an accident. Sadly, that happens. It happens today. Is you hit a power line or you hit something, you don't realize it's there because it's covered up by the limbs. Can't always tell that way. It happens today. Sadly, this happens. So stuff happens all the time. Was the world better? Was it worse? I don't know. But accidents like this happen all the time. We hear about that today. Or a person doing a tree falls. Maybe it falls in a power line, electrocutes someone, or they cut it when they're doing it. It's just a tragic story. It's a tragic story that accidents happen. They happened back then. They happened here. It always happens. But now for some good news. If you're a bee lover and an insect lover, the police are on your side. Police closed street to liberate bees. Okay? Police closed off a busy city street today, while state entomologists with ladders, pruning hooks, saws, ropes freed a tree branch and lowered a swarm of 15,000 bees to the sidewalk. 15, that's a hell of a lot of bees. It's a lot of bees. So entomologists, which are scientists who study bugs, at the height of the operation, part of the swarm fell 30 feet to the ground. So I'm assuming this was a hive. They were swarming a hive or swarming something that fell to the ground. And a cloud of angry bees rose high in the air. So I'm assuming what they mean by swarm is that it was a beehive, and the beehive fell, and all the bees got angry. Eventually, after 2 hours, and with virtually no grandstand, the bees were placed in a hive and taken to the pastoral scene of activity. So basically, they probably had a hive there. Like you've seen beekeepers with the boxes at their hives. They probably put them there, or they took it down, let it settle down, took the hive very carefully out in the middle of nowhere, where they could be active and not have to worry about a city street. But think about it. The police are closing this. That's kind of, they recognize the danger. They close the street. You don't know who's allergic to bees. You don't know. That's tragic. Who would not want someone to go down that street. But the people who lived on the street, if you're there and you're living there and you're not working that day, or you're at home that day for some reason, now you can't enjoy a July day. This is from July. You can't enjoy a nice summer day in New Hampshire because there's bees out your window. But they liberated the bees. Bees survived, and they're off making honey again. And who knows how many ancestors and generations have happened since then. Maybe they're still making bees. Maybe they're still making honey. Just found that funny. So let's see what's next. Here we go. Another robbery. I know a lot of police stuff today, and I don't get anything too serious. I'm sorry about the electrocution. It's a little serious, but stuff like this. But report break on Black Hill. Black Hill. Interesting name for a hill. Black things are happening on hills. 2 hitchhiking youths with a passy fancy for pipe tobacco are believed by police to be responsible for breaking in Osborne's yesterday. Those damn hitchhikers. Always causing trouble. Always causing trouble. Now, it's not always the truth, but you have to remember, this is the 40s, 50s, up until probably the 70s in certain areas, even later, if you're how rural you are. There was a hitchhiking culture. Now, everyone had cars, especially young youths, 18, 19-year-olds. They would hitchhike to get places. Because maybe you didn't have a car, or something like that. You would hitchhike, people would pick you up. That was a thing. That's how people got to places back then. A lot of times that's how you got to places. If you wanted to go from one state to another, or go down, you would hitchhike. Someone would pick you up, go so far, drop you off. You would walk a little bit, hitchhike, someone else would pick you up, and you would eventually get to your destination. If you had no money, and you wanted to go explore, or you were trying to get away, and you had no way to do it, you would hitchhike. That was a culture back then. Whether it was guys, or females, or whoever, that was a way for them to get around back then. It sort of died around in the 70s and mid-70s, and was where it really died, because then these stories started coming out of like people picking up hitchhikers and being serial killers or whatever. Stories like that got more prevalent because, again, the news spread quicker in the 70s than it did in the 40s. So, but that was for probably a generation. That was a way that in certain areas of the country and certain age group of people, that's how they got around. That's how they traveled sometimes. You didn't have the interstate systems of the day. You didn't have that. You had back roads. Maybe you didn't have a car. There wasn't national. You didn't have Greyhound, or you didn't have trains going across the country as much. That's how you got around. So, but the fact that they stole money, they stole $1,000, that's bad. That puts a bad name on hitchhikers. Just sorry, but value of stolen property was roughly estimated at about $100, including a .32 caliber revolver. Oh, $100, not $1,000, $100 in goods. $1,000, probably way over $1,000 a gun, .32 caliber gun. Most guns, the cheapest gun I think you can buy today legally is what, $150, $200 if you want to buy just a small handgun. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Sounds about right. A caliber revolver with an old silver watch and chain. So a pocket watch, silver watch and chain, pocket watch. About $5 in silver. So remember, you had silver and gold. People were still working in silver and gold back then. So people would take silver notes, silver certificates back then. And then operative table model radio. They took a broken radio. They didn't know it was broken, but they took a broken radio. So they stole $100. They stole a watch, some silver, and they can't even listen to music because they took a damn radio. A pair of binoculars and a container which held a small amount of pipe tobacco. So they took tobacco. They took a pair of binoculars so they could go up to a hill in the woods and watch the cops try to find them. According to police, the prowlers made their entry through a rear window after first removing the nails which held the screen in place. Well, those must have been some nails that weren't hammered down right. Did you removing nails from a screen? Neighbors reported seeing 2 youths, or utes. 2 utes. Anyone know where that's from? 2 utes. God, those 2 utes. Or youths. What movie was that from? Anyone put in the comments what movie I'm referencing there? About 17 years old in the area early in the afternoon, one of whom inquired as to the road to Manchester. But the information was not given until police after break was discovered between 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. So they didn't know anything until the break-in, until in the evening. It wasn't reported, wasn't discovered. Officers Campbell and Collin are on the investigation. Hopefully they caught the guys. I didn't see them catch it. They might have ran off. They were hitchhikers. They might have been down the road. Maybe they used the $5 of silver, paid someone to take them really far away, smoked some tobacco, but they still couldn't listen to tunes. How do you not listen to... What if they tossed the radio somewhere? That's kind of funny. And a couple more stories. I'm saving one for last week. I also got other notes for it. So, anyone listening, know anyone, was one, or has ever been associated, know anyone who was in the Boy Scouts? I was a Boy Scout. I was a Life Scout. Enjoyed it thoroughly. Learned a lot of stuff. Learned a lot of basic first aid stuff. I learned a lot of basic stuff of how to do stuff. Just how to work with people in the Boy Scouts. It's not for everyone. I get that. But I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I was in it until I was 18. I ended up being a Life Scout. Didn't reach Eagle. But a lot of our presidents, a lot of our politicians, a lot of highly successful people, if you look in their background, they were Eagle Scouts. I think a lot of astronauts, not sure, but I'm pretty sure Alan Shepard was an Eagle Scout. But a lot of our astronauts, especially the ones that went to the moon, Armstrong, Aldrin, all of them, were in Scouts. And if they weren't Eagle Scouts, they were definitely in Boy Scouts. So this says Ward 1 Scouts open season at high school. So I'm not sure this would ever be in the paper today. This would be a Facebook post today or an Instagram post. It would be. You wouldn't have this in the paper where it's like you're announcing the fact that they opened the season at a high school. This would not be in the paper today. 1947, 1948, this is in the paper. It's a smaller town, but today, with social media, this would be a social media post. Yeah, this would be a social media post today. How times have changed, this would not be in the paper. So, Troop 83 Boy Scouts opened the season's activities late last night with a meeting at the high school with 22 boys present. That's not bad, 22 boys. That's a decent sized meeting. Including over 5 visitors interested in becoming Scouts. Robert Ducat, Tom Dragon. There's a name for it. I love it. Tom Dragon. Sounds like a wrestler name. Or sounds like some gangster name. What's your name? My name is Tom Dragon. Sounds like some movie guy from 1940s film noir. Looking for Tom Dragon. He's a PI. That's what it sounds like. Sounds like a PI. What if that guy became a PI later? Knocking on the door is like, Mr. Dragon? Yes, I'm Dragon. Tom Dragon, PI. At your service. How may I help you? It sounds like a comic book, like one of those film noir, like PIs that there's a little grid on him. Not quite sure what side he's on. He does some things you're not quite sure are legal, but he gets the job done. He finds out what you want, and he ends up getting the girl in the end. That's what it sounds like. Warren Mitchell, Frank Arms, and Carl York. Arms. Frank Arms. Hopefully he ended up with all his arms. Sorry, it's a bad joke. Sorry. The Frank Arms sounds like a guy who got teased a lot. Kids stay teased today, but Frank Arms. Hey, can I get an arm and a leg? Mr. Arms, can I get one of your arms? I got a leg, I just need an arm. Sounds like kids teased him. Probably. And Carl York. Okay. Scoutmaster James Lynch and Assistant William Stoll were in charge. Scoutmasters were in charge. There's a shock. As soon as they wanted to remove the fire hazard in the woods. The Scouts will have a cleanup day at the campsite at Lake Winnipocket. Can't be Winnie the Pooh, it's gotta be Winnipocket. It was announced that the Exchange Hall will again be available for the Scouts beginning next week. The boys had a time for a few Scout games before the period closed. So, if you've never been to a Boy Scout meeting, a lot of times they do stuff, games or whatever, for skills like they'll do a knot tying game or this type of game or pretend first aid game or whatever. They do that to do weeks. They'll plan their activities like I did a lot of cleanup of stuff, did a lot of that. We did a lot of cleanup. If a storm came through, we went out and maybe cleaned up some trails, made sure we did some cleanup of lakes. We went out to the lakes in canoes, picked up trash in the water, did a lot of stuff, great stuff to do. And usually Boy Scouts, it says here, the exchange hall, so usually they meet every week at the same place. That way you know where to go. Hopefully, these guys, Robert Duquette, Tom Dragon, Warren Mitchell, maybe they join the group. I want Tom Dragon to join the group. He should have joined the group, used those skills to be that private eye later on in life. That noir private eye. He knew how to bound and gag you well because he learned how to do knots in Boy Scouts. That's how he got, yeah, that would have been cool. I don't know, but Tom Dragon, if anyone's looking for a great character to set a novel or to set a PI or to set like a character in a book in the 1940s, Tom Dragon's a great name. Maybe not Tom Dragon, maybe Timothy Dragon, but Dragon as a last name is amazing. I'm sure, I don't know if there's any relatives left from Mr. Dragon. If there are, I think that would be great if that was a name of a character in a comic book or old school PI. That would be perfect. Tom Dragon, PI. Sounds like a show. Sounds like a show set in the 1940s, which this article is from 1948. So perfect. Good. Now, last story of the day. So, cigarettes. It's a controversial topic. We know they're unhealthy. We know people still smoke them. They're trying to raise taxes up. Smoking is at an all-time low among adults currently. But it says here, New Hampshire cigarette sales setting record for U.S. So apparently in the 1940s they were smoking like crazy. Per capita averages 8 a day. And the fiscal year was $1,867,421 and change. Was how much they brought in tax revenue for this. Now, I did some little research. 1.5 billion cigarettes were sold in 1946. Okay, 1946. That's the year I found. I couldn't find it for 1940s. 1.5 billion cigarettes in 1946. Now, how many do you think were sold in 2023, which is the last year I could find data for? 2 billion. So, I guarantee you there were years where more than 2 billion cigarettes were sold. So, 1946 to 2023, that's 83 years. The number of people smoking has gone down because only 500 million more cigarettes have been sold in the U.S. Think about that. I guess that's a campaign that's actually worked. It's a long article. I'm just going over the highlights. Nearly 1.5 billion cigarettes were sold in New Hampshire. So this is, I think, just New Hampshire, maybe. I don't know. But 1.5 billion were sold. Yeah, this is New Hampshire. This isn't the U.S., but this is 1.5 billion in New Hampshire. 2 billion. So in New Hampshire alone, which, again, I told you there was 10,000 more people just in Concord. So the state's gone up by probably more than that. You only sell 500 million more cigarettes. It means a lot less people are smoking. Record revenue of 1.8 million, 15% tax on all tobacco products, which is about $4 for every person. So back then, $4 for every person for cigarettes. It's a long article. Basically, it's saying that an average of 2,900 cigarettes for yearly for every adult and minor. So for every adult and minor, that was an average of 3,000 cigarettes. That's a lot of cigarettes a year. It's a lot of cigarettes. This compares with the per capita consumption a year ago. So it went for the residents of Utah, which boasts the 4th lowest cigarette usage populace in the nation. Utah, even back then, they were clean and moral. Those Mormons have been doing this for a while. They don't smoke. They don't really drink. If they do drink, it's like alcohol that's cheap, that has like very little alcohol. Utah is a state, if you want to get rid of your vices, go to Utah. You'll be able to get rid of your vices. Okay, so he's saying that people in the summer, they went out, bought cigarettes, had their cookouts, had their fun, and they smoked cigarettes. That accounts for everything. 17 cents a pack. How would you like to have 17 cents a pack of cigarettes? 17 cent pack of anything. 17 cent pack of gum. Today's, with everything, prices going up, who wants to go out and be able to buy anything for 17 cents? That would be amazing. So it's just a long story about that. More people are smoking in New Hampshire than ever before. Now, with that being said, I don't have my cigar with me today, but if you have a cigar, hope you're enjoying your cigar with your glass of bourbon. Until next time, pour yourself a glass, be neat, my friends, and have a good night. Before I forget, one more thing before we go. Make sure you like, you subscribe to the channel. I'd like to thank all my new subscribers. Thank you all. Still, I'm getting to the point where over 95% of you watch but don't subscribe, so please subscribe. As I said, once I get to 500 subscribers, I'm going to start a Patreon, which I'll provide unique content on. We'll probably start doing the big cities. If you want me to see me in New York, San Francisco, Chicago, LA, all the big cities, I will do those on my Patreon. Also, I will probably do certain distilleries like Buffalo Trace, Jim Beam. I will do the history of those, break it down on my Patreon. That's kind of. But if there are any cities or towns that you guys want me to do, put them in the comments below, and we'll see what we can do. So, and before I forget, one more thing. I would be a horrible husband if I didn't do this. My wife has a channel, has 2 channels, but her main channel is Moondog Tarot. So if you know anyone who's into tarot cards, into horoscopes, into astrology, go to her channel. You'll be entertained, you'll learn some stuff, and maybe help you make an important decision in life. For other ones, the Divine 222, same thing, but that's just for all your Pisces out there. So again, like, subscribe to her channel, like, subscribe, hit the bell for my channel, get all the content and all the bourbon you want. So once again, be neat out there.